In this video, we are going to be reading chapter 4 of The Day We Met the Queen, and this chapter is called The Story That Broke the Internet. The next morning, I jumped out of bed so hard my knees shook and the floorboards groaned. It was finally here, the day that me and my very best friend on the whole entire planet had been waiting for. We were going to go and meet the Queen, the real, live, actual Queen. The one that we saw on our pocket money and in the newspaper and on the television and on stamps. And just as soon as I realised it was here and that I had to get ready, I instantly felt sick. It's funny how your brain can be so happy about something that it feels as if it might burst into a billion stars at any moment, but your body can feel like it has the flu and it is hot and cold and sweaty and giddy, as if there are two different people stuck inside of you having a fight. "Ah, you're up early," said my mum, walking in with a huge smile on her face. Mum doesn't really smile very often, not properly, but when she does, it feels like magic and as if anything can happen. Mum used to smile all the time when Dad was alive, even when there was no real reason to smile at all. Like when Dad never read the signs properly and got lost driving us to an adventure, and she had to read the maps properly for him. Or when she had to eat another dinner that Dad had half burned without meaning to. Dad loved cooking and driving, but he was never good at them. Even though he was a carpenter and could make whatever he wanted with his hands, I can remember Mum making fun of him and making him laugh too. But 4 years ago, when I was 6, Dad died in a car accident, which made Mum stop smiling. Now, she only smiles when something extra special happens. So I want to make as many extra special things happen every day as I possibly can. Some days it's hard, but other days are easier. Like the day you're about to go and have tea and biscuits and who knew what kind of cakes with the Queen. Feeling too excited to do anything else, I ran and gave Mum a hug, but I was jumping up and down at the same time, so it wasn't as warm and cuddly as it should have been. Calm down, laughed Mum as she stroked my head. We can't have you hopping all over the place like a frog when you go and meet the Queen. She gave my head a long sniff. Oh, and you smell fine now, thank goodness. Go and wash up and I'll get breakfast ready, okay? You've got hours yet. I nodded and, still jumping up and down because I was too excited not to, went and got as clean as I could. I had washed out the horrible smells from my hair and nose that night, but I wanted to make extra sure I didn't smell even a little bit like a stink bomb. So I scrubbed my face extra hard with soap and brushed my teeth for an extra minute, and I used 3 extra squirts of hand wash. Then I ran back into my room and closed my door and stared at my clothes. Mum had hung them on a large hanger to make sure they wouldn't get creased. There was my most special black shirt with sparkling silver stars and gold planets all over it that Mum had ironed till it looked brand new, even though it wasn't, and I'd worn it to at least 4 parties, and even to Buckingham Palace on my last adventure there. But the Queen hadn't seen it that last time, so because of everything that had gone wrong, so it didn't matter if I wore it again. Then, behind my shirt was a brand new pair of black jeans that Uncle Lenny had bought for me, because he said he was going to meet the Queen, and it was like going to a wedding, and that you should always wear at least one new thing. And tucked into the pocket of the jeans was an extra special pair of socks that I had bought with my own pocket money. They were bright blue with little dogs all over them, because I read that the Queen likes dogs, and if I run out of things to say to her, or if she starts to look sleepy and bored, I can show her my socks. It's always good to have a backup plan. I was in such a rush to get dressed that I banged my arm on the door and stubbed my toe on the bed, but I was too happy and excited to feel any pain. I was putting on my second sock when I heard the doorbell ring and Mum running to open it. "There's my little tiger," cried Uncle Lenny as I ran out of my room to see who it was. Uncle Lenny is Mum's brother. He has a moustache that tickles my face whenever he gives me a kiss on the cheek, and because he's a taxi driver, he likes putting his hands on my shoulders and pushing me around the flat as if I was a car. I was so glad that my horrible Aunt Christina wasn't with him that I gave him a running hug. Aunt Christina is nearly nowhere near as nice as Uncle Lenny. No matter what's happening or how happy you might be, she always looks confused and angry at the same time, and sniffs the air as if her nose is looking for clues. All spruced up and ready to go, I see, said Uncle Lenny, holding me away with his arms extra straight so that he could see all of me at the same time. You look as if you're fit to go see a queen. Oh, wait a minute, you are. Uncle Lenny looked at me for a second and then began to laugh so much that a tear fell out of his eye. Then, shaking his head, he muttered, "Ah, that's a good one." Grown-ups always like laughing at the things they say, even when what they're saying doesn't even seem that bit funny. It's very strange, but then most grown-ups are, even Uncle Lenny sometimes. Mum bought me a bowl of porridge with a small mountain of strawberry jam in the middle, and Uncle Lenny switched on the TV. Usually, I wasn't allowed to have breakfast on the sofa and watch telly too, but it was such a special day that it felt like all the normal rules didn't matter anymore. "Here, look," said Uncle Lenny, putting the volume up. "Your school's on the news again. I saw it last night too." "Really?" I said, feeling surprised. Mum had worked late at the library last night, and Mrs. Abbey, our next-door neighbour, who looks after me sometimes, had wanted to watch a programme about people who tried to bake perfect cakes and then cried when they couldn't. So I had spent all evening reading my favourite Tintin comic books instead, and thinking about the different cakes the Queen might be asking her bakers to make for us, and how I could convince her to help me prove that Brendan the bully was a stinking criminal. I didn't think reporters would care about our Met and the Assembly because it was cancelled, so I hadn't watched the news at all. As I took a bite of my porridge and Mum took a bite of her toast and Uncle Lenny took a sip of his coffee, the newsreader on the TV looked out at us with a serious look on her face. Behind her was a picture of my school hall. It showed everyone frozen right in the middle of a running and screaming and looking extra panicky. "Newham Nelson School is once again at the centre of a scandal that is rocking the nation," said the newsreader. "What? Because of the stink bombs?" I asked, wondering how stink bombs in an assembly could rock a whole nation. "Shh," said Mum, putting down her toast. Mum only ever put food down back onto her plate when she was serious or angry, so I put my spoonful of porridge down too. The newsreader, as if she had been waiting for us to be quiet, continued. "Yesterday, stink bombs disrupted the school as it gathered for a morning assembly, leading some to wonder if the act was a protest against the impending meeting between Her Majesty the Queen and Ahmet, the refugee boy who made headlines a few weeks ago." "It wasn't a protest against that!" I cried, feeling angry. "It was just Brendan the bully being stupid." "Shh," ordered Mum again, leaning closer in towards the telly. Ahmet was made famous for inspiring a group of children from his class to attempt a break-in at Buckingham Palace. Their aim was simple: to obtain the Queen's help with locating his family, an act which sparked headlines and inspired the Queen to invite Ahmet to tea. In a special address to his school, Ahmet was due to give details about his forthcoming visit, but it was cut short by a flurry of stink bombs, leading to a mass evacuation of the premises and many children and teachers falling ill. Now it seems that what was thought to be merely a childish prank may have actually been part of a wider protest taking part on the streets of London. Here is Ramesh Dej with a full story. The picture on the television changed from the newsreader to a video of our school hall. I could see Ahmet and me and Josie and Tom and Michael all standing on the stage, looking very small, and Ahmet's mouth moving, and then a puff of grey-green smoke, and everyone running and screaming and pushing each other away. But the screams were silent, because over the video there was a man's voice saying, "Yesterday morning, hundreds of people were forced to flee from the assembly hall at Nelson School after a coordinated stink bomb attack. Caught on film by the press, videos of the event are now going viral. The scene was one of pandemonium and chaos, with many asking, was this a protest staged by students who disagree with the presence of refugee children at their school?" The video of school was paused, and the picture changed again, this time to a tall, grey-haired man standing in the middle of a long red road. I recognised the road right away. It was the exact same road me and Tom had walked down a few weeks ago to help Ahmet get help to find his family. "I'm here this bright Saturday morning in front of Buckingham Palace, where in just a few short hours the Queen is due to meet with a child who might be the most famous refugee on the planet. a boy we all know as Ahmet. The reporter frowned as if the name Ahmet was so serious it deserved a special frown of its own. The frown went deeper. As he said, it's a meeting that has sparked endless debates, with some saying the Queen is overstepping her neutral position as head of state by welcoming a refugee of war to tea, and others arguing that supporting refugee children and families within the confines of her role. The camera suddenly pulled away and turned left from the reporter's face. Right behind him you could see a group of children holding up large signs and shouting angrily. There were adults there too. Their signs said things like "Immigrants not wanted" and "Go back to where you belong" and "Refugees not welcome." Lots of them were wearing big blue stickers that said "Fry for Prime Minister." But opposite them, on the other side of the road, was another group of people with signs that said "Refugees are welcome" and "For Queen in all countries" and "All Ahmets welcome." The camera went back to the reporter. Only now the reporter wasn't alone anymore. There was a man standing next to him, a man with large black eyes and a dark grey suit and a bright blue tie. He was someone I had seen before, and whom Mum hated so much that seeing him now made her slam down her plate on the coffee table with an angry bang. Uncle Lenny looked down at me and gave me a wink, which instantly made me feel less scared. Joining me now is Member of Parliament and leader of the National Union of Great Britannia Party, Mr. John Fry. This is what the news reporter said, holding out his microphone. Mr. Fry, what do you make of the anger being directed at what is, to all ends, just an innocent tea party between the Queen of England and a 10-year-old boy? Mr. Fry smiled and looked at the camera, which made Mum make an angry growling noise with her throat. Innocent? He asked. Manipulating our monarchy for political ends is anything but innocent. Refugees leave their countries to take things that aren't theirs to take, whether that's jobs or homes or places in our school or space in our hospitals. And were I Prime Minister, I would have advised the Queen against meeting with these 5 highly dangerous children. Dangerous? Asked the reporter. He looked at the camera and then at the Member of Parliament as if he was beginning to feel uncomfortable. Surely you can't view these 5 children as dangerous. Yes, dangerous. Any group of children willing to break the rules and attack the royal guards, as these children had planned to do just a few weeks ago, are highly dangerous. And I am not the only one who thinks so. The protesters who let off the stink bombs in these children's schools yesterday clearly feel the same. The whole thing stinks. Refugees should not be... That's quite enough, said Mum, picking up the remote control and turning off the TV. Couldn't agree with you more, said Uncle Lenny. Then, giving me a nudge with his arm, he said, We don't need no small fry ruining our day with the Queen now, do we? And laughing again, he wiped another tear away, as I stared and wondered what on earth was so funny this time. I glanced over at Mum, who was looking at Uncle Lenny and shaking her head and grinning. I wanted to ask her at least 5 questions about how we were going to get to the palace when there were so many people there, and what if the Queen got upset and didn't want to see us anymore. But just then, the buzzer to our flat rang. Mum jumped up and pressed the special camera button and then cried up, Come on up, Josie. Over the next hour, our flat went from just having me and Mum and Uncle Lenny in it to having me and Mum and Uncle Lenny, Josie and her mum and dad, Michael and his mum and dad, Tom and his mum, and Ahmet and his foster mum, which, for a very small flat, was quite a lot of people and quite a lot of noise. But everyone was so happy and looked so nice that it didn't seem to matter that no one could sit down. Everyone had worn their very best outfits. Ahmet was wearing a bright blue suit and a white shirt and a bow tie with dots on it, and he had his red rucksack with him. Josie was wearing a pair of sparkly dungarees over a long-sleeved white top that had tiny yellow crowns all over it, and a brand new pair of football trainers. Michael was wearing trousers that he said were made from tartan from Scotland, and a white shirt with a tie that matched his trousers. Tom was wearing a waistcoat that shined blue and green at the same time, and a dark blue t-shirt that had a picture of a Lego queen. I think he had put extra gel in his hair today because it looked stiffer and more golden yellow than it normally did. Mum and me had spent all of last night cleaning and tidying and polishing and putting our books straight to make the flat nice for everyone, instead of watching a film or reading an extra long story together like we normally did on Friday nights. I was glad it looked so nice, and I was especially glad I had tidied up my room because it was the first time Ahmet and Michael and Tom had seen it. I mostly only ever have books in my room and a table filled with some of Dad's old pens and tools. But the one super cool thing I have is the old-fashioned record player Dad left me. I played a record on it for everyone, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't seem to make Mum sad. I think she knew Dad would have liked everyone listening to one of his songs together. "It's 11 o'clock, kids, time to go," announced Uncle Lenny, opening the front door and standing beside it like a butler. "Won't do to be late for the Queen, and traffic is never a friend to anyone on a Saturday." I looked around at my friends and gave them a massive grin. It was finally time to go and see the Queen and ask her our most important questions. And no one, not even Mr. MP Fry, or the people with the angry faces and signs, or Brendan the bully's stink bombs, or even videos that were breaking the internet, could stop us.